Caregivers, have you ever felt like nothing is going right? Well, cheer up and welcome to Dave, the Caregiver's Caregiver radio program, where you'll learn how to avoid that dreaded thing called caregiver burnout and how to survive the grieving process. Join Dave and his guests now as they share practice tips and tools that you can start using immediately to help get you through this day. Now, here's your caregiver host, Dave Nassani.
From Los Angeles, a big LA welcome to all my listeners out there in Radio Land, and I'll just welcome you from Adrian's neck of the woods, from Manhattan, New York City, the Big Apple.
Yeah.
Coming to you live and on demand 24/7 on 14 global platforms like iTunes, YouTube, Spreaker, SoundCloud, Vimeo, Stitcher, Blog Talk Radio, and I'm not going to go on because you get the idea. Oh, let me introduce my beautiful co-host, Adrian Gruberg, from the founder of the Caregiver Space. Say hello, Adrian.
Hello. Thank you.
We heard you making noise back there. So today, Adrian and I will be interviewing Kristina Ashley, author of her new book, Always Love, that she is currently on tour with, and we'll be talking about death and dying and her perspective on that. So let's get started. But before we do, first I want to take this moment to thank my last week's guest, author of The Divorce Tango, Cheryl Duffy, talking about caregivers who find that caregiving has cost them their marriage. Ouch. And how they can move forward and let go of the past. And you can watch that or listen to that interview and all our interviews on our membership website, caregiverdave.com, or any of our other networks that I mentioned earlier, iTunes, YouTube, SoundCloud, etc. All right, enough of that. Hey, a big welcome to my guest, Kristina Ashley. Welcome, Kristina.
Hello, Dave. Hello, Adrian. Thank you for having me.
I always like to ask my guests, just who is Kristina Ashley and why was she put on this earth? How about that for a question?
Start out with a big one. Luckily, since my early 20s, I've spent a lot of time trying to figure that out, even though I just turned 29.
I used to be 29.
I know. I used to be a few times. Well, let's see. Who am I? I've just gone through a really powerful time, even in this last year, getting more connected with who and what I am. And I've come to realize that that I have a gift for helping people be more at peace, whether they're having anxiety over their job or anxiety over a relationship or stress on any level. My current job is a personal assistant, and I do have clients that are in the limelight, and I seem to be able to easily keep them grounded and in a good space with everything that they're dealing with. I just seem to have a natural ability for that, and I have for a long time. And now I'm recognizing it more in myself as a gift, not from an ego place, but just really tuning in more to my soul and who and what I am, and then just allowing that to be that way and following that direction in my life of just being there for people at whatever time, whether it's a transition of a death or anxiety over something or marital relationship issues. It just kind of seems to be at the right place at the right time situation. And so in my name, Kristina Diane means to heal with love. And so I've just kind of always thought it was integrated in me that is really who I am, to come into this world and to try to heal people with love.
And the subject of death and dying is a very controversial one, because you can get into an argument with someone about what happens after death, and what happens before birth, and there's so many different perspectives because there's so many different religions and so many different philosophies. And how do you deal with what you believe and are able to communicate with those who maybe have all these different smorgasbord of opinions about death and dying?
Well,
I mean, one size doesn't fit all, does it?
No, no. And it's important to be very conscious of that, even as a caregiver, which you guys would know. And so I'm glad that you asked that, because that's part of what I was really conscious of in creating this book that helps people deal with death, dying, and grief, Always Love, because I had to make sure that it was the images and things were abstract enough that it crossed all religions. So whether you were devout Catholic, Christian, whatever, that there was nothing in the book that would, hopefully there was nothing in the book that would feel offensive or...
So no one's going to be offended, no matter what their religion is, reading this book. Is that your promise?
Well, it's not my promise, but it really was my intent. I really had a clear intent on that in creating the book. And so I hope that that resonates when people are reading it. So far, the response has been really good. I live in Sedona, Arizona, and we have such a mixed bag of people here from all over the world. And so
New York too, LA too.
Yeah. And so we have people buying the book from, Japan and from the Philippines.
Wow.
And from all over, And so far I haven't gotten any feedback.
No hate mail yet, huh?
No, I haven't. But I'll just love the haters anyway when I get them. That's what it's all about.
We live in a time where you can't have a conversation with anyone, even football, without getting into some kind of controversial argument, or even go to the restroom without getting into an argument about something. So, it's unusual that people won't find this offensive. That's great.
Well, and I also, I would never want to argue with anyone about what they really feel and believe. That is for them, and that's sacred to them for whatever reason. And so I could offer what I think and feel, and I've come to know through my own experience. But if that didn't resonate with them, I don't feel any need to try to change that in them whatsoever. So I can just, go on my way and just be fine, even if it doesn't resonate with them.
Well, that sounds like a good attitude to approach this, don't you think, Adrienne?
Definitely.
So what were the circumstances that led to you being a caregiver? Because you were a caregiver as well, right?
When I was 12, my mom went to work full time, and I was the oldest of 3 girls, and so I became a caretaker, really. And so I made sure my sisters had baths and did their homework, and there was food on the table, and all of those things that needed to be done. And there were some other circumstances in my childhood for I just kind of always fell into that caregiving role. So as I got older, continued to end up in assisted living homes, different situations, or the neighbor. I'd move in somewhere and find out that the neighbor didn't have anybody to look after her, take care of her. And I would set her up with, Life Alert at least, and I would, check on her, bring food, that kind of thing. So it always just kind of seemed to fall in my lap. So in the group home situation and other situations, I was there for end-of-life care quite a bit. And that really fulfilled my interest in death, dying, and grief that I had. So I was able to have many different experiences with people that were what I call transitioning. And I was never afraid of it, and it never upset me. I mean, not that I would never cry or have emotions about it, but I would never have fear about it or anything like that.
So you realize
I just kept...
Go ahead. I'll let you finish your thought.
So I just kept having opportunities to have that experience and help bring peace to people going through that experience, the person that was dying and the family that was dealing with it. And I became a hospice volunteer, and so different genres of caregiving. Pets. I do pet sitting sometimes. You name it.
Well, great. I have this question I want to ask you. Will my pets that have died be in eternity with me wherever I go, which I believe I'm going to heaven?
Yes, I believe you are too.
Yeah, someone wrote a book, All Dogs Go to Heaven, I think.
All Dogs Go to Heaven.
I know. It became a movie or something. I really feel like those things are individual to each person, not for me to necessarily answer for you, like to teach you how to believe in any certain way. I feel like it's important to believe whatever is in our heart and what resonates with us. So, but I do believe that pets are way more conscious than we think that they are. And
yeah, they can
that
read.
connection remains.
Talk about, my wife
Connection
can't.
remains after transition.
My wife can't speak. She, lost the language part of her brain when she had a stroke. And so she, in many ways, has become like the dog because the dog can't speak, but the dog can communicate. And our dog, I mean, they watch every single move. They know.
They know.
Like an hour before we're going to leave the house that we're going to leave the house, and they start
Right.
getting ready. So we've got
Yeah.
these tells, these
Exactly.
signs that these poker signs, and I try to, when he starts getting all excited, I'm saying, what am I doing that is communicating to him that he thinks he's going to go with me? And it's very interesting, and my wife has likewise honed those instincts because she can communicate very, very well without saying a word.
Well, I do believe that everything is energy, and it's been scientifically proven everything is energy. So if you look at it from that standpoint, animals are so tuned in, and they so recognize even the slightest shift of energy.
Right.
And even a slight shift could be a shift in our thinking. So the shift in our thinking could be, oh, I need to go to the store right now. And that shifts something just enough in our energy for the dog to pick up on it. And they're ready to go an hour before you are. But with that in mind, to answer your question, Dave, about, is your dog going to be there forever in eternity for you? What I will say is that because everything is energy, I believe that your dog, all pets, definitely understand the resonance of love. And I believe that love is the highest resonance, the highest vibration. And so in that way, I feel like even when a pet transcends, they're still connected with that love energy. So you can take that in any way, if that means they're going to be with you in the beyond or whatever. But I feel like that resonance of love keeps us connected.
Yeah, and there's no other creature on earth who displays to us, humans, what is unconditional love. This dog will love you no matter what. You can be gone for an hour, come home, and he acts like you've been gone forever, and he's so excited to see you. And, when you have young children in the house and a wife, and you come home, honey, I'm home, and the one person who is more excited to see you than your kids,
The dog, yeah.
the wife, your uncle, that dog, and thank God for my dog, because many times, well, at least the dog's glad to see me.
Yeah.
And the other thing I wanted to say,
Okay.
I'll forget if I don't say it, is that, we have a breed of dog that we're making a support animal because they can somehow tell if the owner is going to have a seizure before it happens. They know if earthquakes are going to happen before it happens. And I also wanted to say, I had to keep writing them down or I'd forget, that you are one of the 1.6 million children caregivers when you were 12 who cares for people, who probably didn't ever get any breaks. The labor department says after so many hours you need a 20-minute break, and then after so many hours you need a 30-minute lunch hour. I assume you never got those legal breaks that you were supposed to get, because so many kids are handling adult responsibilities with caregiving.
Yeah, in fact, I've never even thought of if I should have got breaks until you just mentioned it right this minute.
It didn't occur to you.
To go, wait a minute. Yeah, it never even occurred to me because, it was ongoing because you're doing the laundry and you're putting food on the table and making sure people get baths and they're not fighting and arguing and, and your schoolwork and going to school and, all of that.
Do you feel like you were somehow cheated out of your childhood in a little way because you were a caregiver?
That's part of a lot of things that I've had to work through in my life. letting go of the bitterness and the resentment and that feeling of loss, because it actually can cause you health issues when you hold on to those things. And so I've been learning to let go of that, and I've done pretty well with that. I think that now I'm in a place of understanding, well, the gratitude. Now I'm in the place of the gratitude because, oh, hey, that helps me with my business so well as a personal assistant. I know what needs to be done before somebody tells me it needs to be done. Because if I didn't get it done before it needed to be done when I was a kid, I got in trouble.
Yeah.
So
You had to be a mind reader.
You did. And so now people say, oh, I was just going to ask you to do that. You already got it done. And then they're even more
you're
pleased
like,
with me.
on the series MASH, there was a character called Radar, and he always knew what his captain was going to say, finishes his sentence for him. Hey, Radar, can you give me? Here you go, sir.
And that was an appropriate name, Radar, because we talked earlier about energy, and it is like a radar that it's just a radar that's always there from how you grew up. You had to have that radar on, or you could get in trouble, or somebody could get hurt, or So Radar was a very appropriate name.
How young were you when you first experienced death and dying?
Well, I would say earliest was pets. Pets dying. In fact, I think I've been more devastated over pets dying than some people sometimes. Because of the unconditional love. The unconditional love that you have with that pet. And so then, of course, it would be, grandparents and things like that. But I just always inherently just never went through a really, really, really hard time with those things. It's like I understood it in a level that brought me peace. And so if you were to even ask me to pick one death that really, was traumatic for me, my father died of Lou Gehrig's disease at age 62. And I was there, as he was going through that process. And it was traumatic to see him go through that and to suffer in that way.
Right.
But it wasn't traumatic for me to let him go and to know what was happening with him and the transcendence that was happening. And I was really okay.
It sounds like there was no fear involved.
No, for him there was. He didn't have a spiritual foundation, but for me there was not.
That's great.
So how did your spiritual path come into play in how you dealt with death and grief through the years as a hypnotherapist, which we'll talk about that, a caregiver, and the author of this book?
Yeah. Well, I was a hypnotherapist by the time I was 27. I had my own practice in Kalamazoo, Michigan. Where I lived. Kalamazoo, zoo, zoo. And
you didn't do a show at Vegas, right?
I know. And I loved it. And I was booked all the time. I did very well with that. And it gave me a lot of experiences that people have, quote, in the beyond, when they just let themselves be completely open. So that really facilitated my thoughts and feelings about not having fear about death or dying and grief. And so in the hypnotherapy, especially doing past life regressions and stuff like that, I just really enjoyed it and learned from it and had a great connection with the people. And just got even more affirmed that there's nothing to fear when we cross over, or what I call make our transition. And so when I had this experience that helped me create this book, All Was Love, when it was happening, I didn't have any fear in the experience. It felt natural to me. And I think if I didn't have the background I did and the lack of fear about death and dying, I wouldn't have been able to have that experience and have it in a peaceful way.
Right.
And be able to carry it forward.
Yeah.
So,
And Adrienne, if you have a question, just butt right in. but I wanted to ask you how does hypnotherapy It always fascinated me.
Hmm.
How does hypnotherapy break through to the subconscious? Because we all want our subconscious to behave, because I know that our subconscious is stupid. It's just whatever you tell it, it will say, "Oh,
Oh,
okay,
That's
yeah,
just
it's
the man's
not.
subconscious
I'll
and
never get that
stupid.
job. Oh, okay, I'll make sure that happens. Thank you." You know, and we self-sabotage ourselves. How many people do
Yes.
you know
Mhm.
who are constantly trying to do things and things coming out of their mouth is just garbage and they become self-fulfilling prophecies? So how does hypnotherapy break through to something that we can't seem to get our fingers on, or when we're dreaming, and we have a breakthrough in a dream and we wake up and it just starts to dissipate and it's like, no, no, it's like you got
Mhm.
don't leave yet. I didn't finish writing it down.
Well, one of the main things in hypnotherapy is you spend a good amount of time getting the person really relaxed. And how often, even in your day-to-day life, are you really, truly relaxed so that your brain can get down to beta and theta and those lower levels? So that's a key. You provide an opportunity through your voice and resonance and your connection with your client to get them into such a place of relaxation that they're open to these loving and peaceful suggestions, supporting them and relaxing even more. So that's a main key of it, is to you're just so relaxed and you feel so at peace that you allow yourself to be open in ways that you potentially wouldn't when you're on your job or you're dealing with your spouse or you're even doing work at your computer. And in
Hmm.
that open space, and you're feeling safe, um, and someone can just make suggestions to you like let's go down this path, or when you open this door perhaps you'll see another lifetime or whatever, and you're open to those suggestions because you feel safe and secure and you are open to an experience. You want to have an experience and see what happens, and you're not in a place of fear. And
How do
if
you,
you do say, mhm.
I just wanted to know how do you imbue that kind of trust in someone that they can relax and then trust you to be,
Well, I would
to be
say,
relaxed and
right,
open.
for me, I would say that if somebody's coming to me for hypnosis, um, that they already know that they want to have an experience and they're willing to trust it on some level.
Okay.
And hopefully, when they sit down with me and we have a conversation, I don't just try to put them in hypnosis immediately. I have a conversation about what's going on with them, what they need. And again, we'll establish a resonance. If that
Mhm.
resonance is there, they will feel comfortable. And if they feel comfortable, then, they'll be okay with allowing this to happen. Although some people can feel really comfortable. I have a friend, she's a very dear friend, and she just can't allow herself to go into a hypnotic state, no matter who it is, no matter
Mhm.
what, she just won't allow it to happen. So, there are different
Subconsciously, you mean,
circumstances.
or willfully?
Both. Yeah, both. You just willfully will not, and then there's subconscious things that um, facilitate
Yeah.
consciously not being
Mhm.
willfully. Hmm.
And I forgot to mention that this is an amazing book. A child can read it and understand it, and
Hmm.
that's always
Mhm.
a good sign for a book that a child can read it. And the paintings in here are just out of this world. They're just
Thank you.
almost magical and
They are
talk
magical,
to
yeah.
your talk to your subconscious. I don't know if you've seen these,
Yes.
Adrian,
No, 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 I haven't.
but look at some of this stuff.
There's too much glare on it.
How's that better?
That's better. Wow, that's beautiful.
you know. And the
Yeah.
words are few and far between. So, I mean, even someone who doesn't like to read, like me, you can digest this book in about, I
Nice.
don't know, 90 seconds, 5 minutes. Depends on how much time you want to spend on it. But it starts with the words, the end.
Yeah.
Today was a
That's
good day to
good.
die. The
Yeah.
air was cool and breezy, and I have to turn the page to read the next one. And it was easy to fly into heaven on a beam of light. I mean, I'm feeling relaxed just reading this. I could
Just
probably
reading
fall
it.
into a hypnotic state.
Yeah, maybe I
Was that
did
your
bring some of
intention?
that hypnotherapist training in there. I never thought
Ah,
about it before.
I was just feeling relaxed as I was reading it, and just saying, I feel like I am flying, you know. So was that your intention to like hypnotize us when we read your
Oh.
book?
Well, my intention was to bring peace, and
Well, you
so
certainly accomplished that.
thank you. Um, I'll try to give the very short version of this. I had an experience of a young girl who had just transitioned. She was in a rollover Jeep accident. She just graduated from high school. She was the cousin of my boyfriend at the time.
Now, when
And
you
as
say
I,
transition, for those that are listening, that's another
yeah,
term
she
for
died.
dying, right?
yes, so
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, she died. Yeah,
Transition
thank
from
you.
one
And
reality to another.
yes. And so when my boyfriend at the time told me that what had happened, I don't know why, but I was drawn to go sit outside. Just go sit and be quiet. And I had been meditating for a few years by then anyway. So I just went and sat outside. And I'd never even met her before, but somehow I knew it was her. I energetically knew it was her. And
mm,
she was giving me the experience that she was having as she was transitioning. And it was all energy,
A
but I think maybe,
play-by-play?
well, I think maybe because I was a writer even then, and I wrote poetry and wrote articles and stuff. I was probably my early 30s. I could understand the energy in words. And so I was able to write them down, and it came out as
Wow.
this poem. And when I read it, I was like, wow. In this poem, it's trying to be expressed what the soul goes through when it transitions, and that it comes to realize when it reflects back or when it looks back, it comes to realize that it was all love, all of
Uh-huh.
it. All of it was love. And then when they merge into that beyond, they're merging into that highest vibration of
mm-hmm,
Uh-huh.
love and realizing that had they known that when they were here in the physical body, that it's all love. And if they could have lived from that place, how differently they could have lived and
Mm-hmm.
how differently of a world we could have if we understood that it's all love. And there's no need to, um, you know, argue about things or have hate or, it gets a little bit more deep than that. And we don't have to get into all that today, but that was the experience that I felt that she gave me, that resonance of just knowing when you transcend, you come to realize that it was all love. It was just all
uh,
love.
I'd love to hear some of those words of the poem if you have them handy, or maybe after the break you can or maybe you memorize it in your mind. I don't know.
I've edited this book so much. I do have most of it
Why don't you
memorized,
share a
but
few lines of that poem if you can?
yeah, well, you started out with it, Dave. I have a copy right
Oh,
here. Yeah. You started out, Dave. It was really interesting. It starts with an infinity symbol and the end.
uh-huh.
Um, and then the first line was, "Today was a good day to die." And what's interesting about that is I have a friend that was at 9/11 when it
Mm-hmm.
happened. And she was walking through the streets when the ash was coming down and the burning buildings and everything, totally traumatized. And when she read that first line, she said, "I cannot accept that. It was not a good day for all those people to die. It was absolutely, I cannot accept that. Day was a good day to die." And I said, "You know what, I honor that you feel that way. I do, and I can understand why you would feel that way. But as my friend, would you do me a favor and read through the rest of the poem and let me
mm,
know if there are other things that upset you or if
mm,
there's anything in there that resonates with you?" And she agreed. And the beautiful thing is, by the time she got done with the poem, she said, "Keep that first line.
Mm-hmm.
It's important to have that first line. It wakes you up just enough to take you on the journey of the book, which
Mm.
ultimately puts you in a place of peace about dying or grieving." So I thought that was amazing feedback from somebody who'd been in such a traumatic
Yeah.
experience,
mm-hmm.
that they could read that first line but somehow transcend it in reading the book, that they no longer felt that way. So today was a good day to die is the way that it starts out. And the air was cool and breezy, and it was easy to fly into heaven on a beam of light, watching
Wow.
others in flight. And all at once, all was love. And it continues to go on. I won't read the whole thing now, but that was the experience that she gave me energetically that she was having, like on a beam of light, watching others in flight. And I'll tell you a cute little story. Last October, I was at a retreat with 12 phenomenal, spiritually conscious women, all healers. So the energy in the room was amazing. And I brought a copy of the book with me, and I didn't even know why. And I just was more of a visitor there. I wasn't in the whole retreat. And I had the book with me, and originally the cover was like this. You'll see the light going up like this. And
Upside down.
yeah. And I felt her energy again, and I hadn't felt it in all these years. I felt her energy again, and it said, turn the cover upside down, and you will see me. And if you look at the cover, you can see this golden image right here that looks like a body of light. And so I called Kamal, the designer of the book, immediately, and I said, oh, and we were practically done. I said, we got to turn the cover upside down. If you turn the cover upside down, you can see her. We've got to
So
have
it's upside
that.
down now.
Yeah,
the right
that's
way.
right side up. So just little magical things like that have happened all along
Abstract
the way.
art. You never know if you're looking at it correctly.
I know. And, Dave, that's a good point. Why I picked such abstract art goes back to what you asked me about religions and stuff. I wanted it to be abstract so that if you look at an image in the book, and if you see an angel or you see something in it, in your interpretation, but I'm not trying to lead anyone anywhere or define any religion in the book. It's all to personal interpretation, and the images being that way. That was the intent of that, so that it crosses all religions. And what you said, Dave, too, about children. We have had this shared with some children, and they get it. The images are beautiful. And the message is simplistic enough, and it just brings them peace.
I'm going to give this to my grandson and see how he reacts to it. He's 14. He's going through a tough time. And he's been rebellious. He's glued to the computer with that stupid game that everybody's addicted to. They're playing with hundreds of people with headphones. And, trouble in school and, trying to stay away from pot. I'm interested how he'll react to this, because it's so simple. It's so on his level, I'll give you.
But
I'll tell him to
on
write
his
a
level.
review on Amazon.
Yes, please do. It's so on his level, and yet it would be on the level if you were 35,
right,
57, 69, 90.
Yeah.
I just sat down and read it with a 95-year-old a couple of days ago.
What was your reaction?
She's very, very spiritually conscious. She's a meditator all her life and initiated by saints and, but at 95, still really with it. And so we sat down and looked at it together, and she just kept oohing and eyeing, and she just kept saying, yes, that's what it's like. She hasn't died yet, but somehow in her meditations or something, she just felt like it was just resonating perfectly.
All right. Well, the time is going way too fast, so
yes,
I want to make sure I get just having too much fun here, Adrienne.
No,
more fun than people should be.
I had one question. Can I ask?
Yeah.
I just wanted to know, in terms of timing, how close was this young woman's passing to your going out and experiencing her transitioning?
Within a day.
But it wasn't like immediate at the hospital.
No, well, I don't think she didn't survive the accident, so she didn't make it to the hospital. And as
Okay.
well, if we put up the link to my website, if anyone's interested more, they can go on the website and there's a page that says story, and they
Okay.
can read the story.
Okay.
And it outlines things more clearly, but for time's sake, I'm trying to cut it down.
What's your website?
www.allwaslove.com.
It's like the name of the book.
Yes. So she died in the accident. And I believe my boyfriend at the time got the call, within a day, because he was, his family. And so it would have been within a day that I had experience with her. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Thank you.
And then over 20 years later, that she tells me to turn the cover of the book upside down. So this is really important to her. She's still guiding us.
Tell me about the artist, because this is just not some guy who's good with a watercolor brush.
And look at me.
I did watercoloring, and I know
it's tough.
I can appreciate it.
Yeah, Trea is probably one of the most beautiful souls you could ever know. I'm so blessed. I had this idea for a book, and I didn't have art for it, and I actually gave up on it for a few years because I couldn't find the right art. I came out to Sedona on the vacation, went to a local restaurant, and his art was in the restaurant. And as soon as I saw it, every cell in my body started vibrating.
That's it.
And I became consumed, obsessed. I had to have this artist. I had to have this art. He didn't know me. I didn't know him. But I got his home phone number through the manager of that restaurant. And I called. And sounded like a crazy woman. I have this idea for a book. You don't know me, you've never met me, but I've got to have your art. And came to his home. I was on vacation in the Sedona area. Came to his home and sat down with he and his partner, who ended up becoming the graphic designer of the book, Kamal, and told him my idea and why I thought it was important and how I thought it would help people. And then I said, and I have no money to pay you. I have no money to give you for your art. I need that part to be clear. But I'll give you half of everything. If it sells 3 million copies, I don't care if it sells 500 copies, whatever happens. Right. You get half of everything. I'll make sure you haven't overinvested in this. And he said, I'm in.
Fantastic.
And I wept. I wept because it was so long just getting there. So Trea is such a gracious human being, and it's taken us 7 years to put this project together from beginning to end.
Wow.
And he has just been, so easygoing the whole time, letting me use whatever I wanted to use for the book, making lovely suggestions from his artistic eye. Well, let's try this. Mm-hmm. Well, let's add this. Well, let's. So he's really a big part of the display of this book, not just in the art. And here's an interesting point I want to get across. When you look at this art, which you can see, Dave, and if any of your viewers buy the book, Trea is colorblind. So if you look at this art, Dave, which you have, and then consider that this artist is colorblind, you'll be even more amazed. How can he come up with that when he can't really see color? But that means he has to tune into his intuition more and the flow and trust. And I think that's why it comes out so beautifully.
How do blind people sense the presence of someone in the room when they're really quiet, or very interesting.
Yeah.
Getting back to the dog's instincts,
Yeah. So Trea has been, he's definitely my full partner in this adventure with All Was Love. And without his art, it just could not have been this kind of experience for people. So, and I just sat with somebody this morning, and while they read the book, a younger gentleman, and he's also a graphic designer. He's an artist and photographer. And he said, wow, the words just merge with each page so well. I mean, and I feel like I know that, but to hear that from other people is really meaningful.
Yeah. Now, for those who haven't grasped what the message is by listening, let's be clear. What do you feel is the main message that All Was Love is trying to convey to those that are dying or grieving?
Yeah. Well, I feel like I know my intent for creating this book with this message was to bring people peace for someone that they were grieving that had passed on, died, transitioned. But also if you're in experience of, a terminal illness or something and we're going to be dying, to help bring you peace about that upcoming experience. So with that intent, the message of the book for me, and I'm hoping goes out, is for people to be able to reflect when they're grieving someone, that soul went through a beautiful transition and came to realize that everything about this life was love. And then there's nothing to carry with you. There's no pain
Baggage.
or anger
Mm-hmm.
or baggage to carry with you. You are in that ultimate highest vibration of love, and you realize that
Yeah.
all of this was that too. It was just our mind and other things that keep us from experiencing that fully. So I'd like people to understand that message, that this experience is all love at the level that you can grasp it. Now, I got this message over 20 years ago, and if you think I'm perfect at it, you're crazy. Because if you think I go through every minute of every day thinking that, oh, it's all just love. The internet went out today
All
when
you
we're
need
supposed to
is
have this
love.
interview. And do you think I went, oh, well, it's just lovely. I was like, oh, no. But overall, especially in times of great stress and grief and trauma, as we're in a process of it, at some point, if we can come to that inner peace and know that experience was for our soul. It
Mm-hmm.
was an experience for our soul to have and to direct us in more of the place that we're going. And I believe that place that we're going is that consciousness of love, of
Mm-hmm.
complete love for everyone and everything, for ourselves, for our world, so yeah, I really want the message of the book to bring peace and a resonance with love in a deep and consistent way as possible. And I feel
I'll
like that will help a lot of people.
I'll
Yeah.
save my question for after the next break.
Yes. So
Okay.
don't go away, and I want you to remind me also, you girls, that we want to talk about, how everyone always says, "Oh, and I was facing death, and my life flashed before my
Oh.
eyes." Everyone seems to say it, and in fact, I almost died 2 or 3 times, and it happened to me. All of a
Hmm.
sudden, in a millisecond, but it seemed longer.
Hmm.
You just think of all of the people you're leaving behind. You think of, all of the things that you did not do yet, all of the people that you wanted to talk to. I mean, it's just so much, and I don't know how they can fit it in a millisecond, but it happens.
Well,
What's your opinion?
it depends on your belief. Some beliefs say there is no time. So what is a
Well,
millisecond?
no, there is no
Yeah.
time. You're
Yeah.
absolutely right. But on
Yeah.
this earth, there is time, and we haven't left yet. So it's like, did we almost leave? And we're kind of in two worlds at that moment because maybe we really could have or should have or were supposed to die, but something, maybe whoever's in charge wasn't sure. I don't mean God. I mean, the underlings weren't quite sure if to pull the lever yet. Oh, well, maybe okay. That's the
Yeah.
best way I can put it. I don't know.
Well, it's interesting. I have that experience of life flashing before my eyes. It's like a movie that
Hmm.
happens in my meditations, not all the time. Or I do have PTSD from my childhood traumas, and sometimes I'll get triggered about something, and if I
Mm.
close my eyes, my life will pass before my eyes in a way that helps me see all of the things that happen that are triggering that experience right in that minute and help me put it all together. So I I would say it has something to do, obviously, with the brain being in a certain state connected with the consciousness of your life. And that review, I know it helps me in times of if I'm triggered and having anxiety, that review helps me put everything together into perspective so that I can see the big picture of what's going on. It isn't really about this moment right here where somebody has triggered me. It's about many, 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 many things that have happened to me in a lifetime. And I can put it all together, and then I can maybe even make a decision, or I can see what it really is, and my anger or my anxiety will start to lessen. So the only way for me I can relate that is maybe our life flashes before our eyes, because in that instant we're being given an opportunity to see the big picture. And again, it's in an instant, but it's not really in an instant.
Not really in an instant.
Yeah.
And it's part of the process that we go through when we're transitioning. And for me, it would be part of the process you would go through to get to the place of looking back and realizing, oh, well, it was all love. Now that I see it, now that I see this, my life flash before my eyes, even the most traumatic things, and believe me, I've had some pretty traumatic things happen to me. It's a very powerful place to look back at those things. It could be an attempted rape. It could be a parent that physically, beat me terribly. It could be all different kinds of things I've gone through in life. And to now be able to be in a place and look back on that and realize that on some level, somehow, if I can grasp that was love. And what I mean by that is it was a kind of love that the soul understands, and the soul uses it to have the experience that the soul wants and needs to have to get where we're going. And that doesn't resonate with everyone, and I completely understand that. It's my own personal experience, and the experience that's more fortified for me because of this book and this experience I had with Tammy.
That's an interesting experience, because it's almost like our subconscious is letting down its guard and allowing us to have a greater vision of what's out there, and all of the things.
And let me ask you,
maybe
Dave,
more than the 3% of our brain, we're accessing more of our brain, which I believe is the brain of God, Yeah.
Dave and Adrienne, if you can think of an experience in your life that was really traumatic, that to you was like just so traumatic, and you could somehow now look at it and go, oh, that was love. That was actually an experience of love for my soul to have, to help make me a more conscious human being, a more compassionate human being, a more involved human being, helping others.
This sort, what you're saying right now is very connected to what I wanted to say. Ask.
That's why you were supposed to wait.
Yeah.
Yes.
Felt so bad being so selfish.
We didn't talk about. We've talked about how this works with people after the transition, and how we hope it brings them peace. But I was in a place before my husband passed where I knew that all was love and that it was okay. But not everybody is there.
No.
So I think that this book would be wonderful for caregivers who were sitting at their loved one's bedside and they're worrying.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, I can just, I think it would be very important in that regard, because if you're not in that place, it is totally traumatic. I was very lucky. It was, everything was okay. Because it was love.
Right.
Yeah, and I'm an evangelical Christian, and there's a temptation to always look at things critically and judgmentally and say, well, but this doesn't violate or offend any of my beliefs, because because I was a very spiritual person even before I became a Christian. In fact, I was a metaphysical person before I became a Christian, because who could not believe that our spirit is just as important as the physical and the mental and the emotional?
Mm-hmm.
And so, instead of getting your shorts all, what's the expression, in a bind,
In a bond.
Your knickers in a
you know,
bundle.
Knickers
just
in a
recognize the truth. I mean, Christians for centuries have been wrong about so many things, and then they become enlightened. Oh, I guess it's not a sin to wear jewelry. Oh, I guess
Yeah, I can't
Coca-Cola.
eat fish on Friday.
I guess it isn't evil to drink Coca-Cola because it has bubbles, and we're still becoming enlightened without violating, what the Bible says, and you're still and Jews, Orthodox Jews, and other people who are trying to live their life according to the book that they believe in,
You don't have to be Orthodox, Dave.
No.
Well, what's
Or
interesting
conservative
too,
or reformed, yes.
Yeah.
Right?
What's interesting too is I've had people read this book at different times of a loved one dying. So it might be a day after, it might be 3 months after, just kind of falls in their lap at the right time. And it's interesting to see, I just had someone who's a very dear friend and her mother passed, and she had just ordered a copy of the book, so it came shortly after her mother passed.
Yeah.
And she took it to her dad. So this was within just a few days of his wife of over 60 years passed.
Yeah.
And she sat with him and they read the book. And he said it brought him peace. It brought him peace. And when you're with somebody over 60 years and they have just passed, and it can bring you to a new level of peace, that means everything to me. That's what I want for people, to have peace
and this
wherever
book,
they're at.
I can see myself reading this book to my mother when she had dementia just before she died.
Mm-hmm.
Because let's face it, my mother was a very strong Christian, and yet in the last days, her mind could not absorb too much, but it could absorb this,
Yeah. Yeah.
Someone with severe dementia or Alzheimer's. Because it relates to them on a certain level.
I had a client for 5 years, Muriel. She was wonderful, and she just passed June 13th this year, and she was 97. Just severe dementia. In 5 years of caregiving her, she never remembered my name, which I didn't take personally. But a week or so before she passed, I was able to bring her the book and read it with her. And she was really almost completely gone. I mean, mentally and even the soul. I mean, she was going in less than a week. And you just saw her smile, and she leaned down and she'd give me a kiss on my cheek, and she'd give me another kiss on my cheek, and she brushed my hair. And I know that on some level she got it. And that meant so much to me, especially when you've cared for someone for 5 years. Dave, you would completely understand this, and Adrian, you would understand for spirits you've been through too. When you've deeply cared for someone and been their caregiver in that place, and you know that there's a part of them that just isn't there, but they can somehow still grasp this, even just energetically, that it just brought me so much peace for her having that transition.
I know when my mother was dying that there was this sensation I had of her just hanging on. And I would, a book like this, I could have read to her at her bedside, and maybe it would have relaxed her and taken her to a place where things would have been more peaceful for her and not quite as troubling.
Well, and that's why we created. I had the idea, and we focused on creating this as a gift book. Because what happens if you're in the office and someone's a close coworker and their mother dies, and you don't know what to say? Oh, I'm sorry for your loss, but it seems inadequate.
Right.
And send flowers. I mean, people just like they're not sure. Well, this is a gift book. I mean, you can sit down, you can give it to yourself, you can read it, you can share it with children, you can share it with somebody that lost their pet. I mean, it just really encompasses the scope of death, dying, and grief. But it's meant to be a gift book that you can give to someone. It's meant to be that bridge, so that it could be even a coworker and their mother died, and you're trying to figure out how to deal with it on your end, but not upset them, but whatever. You can give them a copy of this book and feel like you've done something the best of your ability to help them be more at peace and in this experience that they're having of grief and loss. So that's why
buy
we
a bunch of them
specifically,
in bulk.
yes,
Yes.
we've
You
had
know.
that.
Yes.
I just had Teresa in Louisiana. She owns a salon.
Mhm.
Oh, lovely, lovely woman. And her husband is terminally ill. And she got a hold of a copy of the book. And now she's carrying it in her salon. She kept reading it to everybody that was sitting in their chair to get their hair
Wow.
cut. And people kept ordering it and ordering it on my website. And finally I said, well, why don't you just sell it out of your salon and offer a wholesale price, and you can make some money since you're promoting me more than you had. And so we sent her copies of the book, and she's selling them out of her salon. And I'm thinking, who would have thought that this is going to sell out of a salon? But people come in there and they're dealing with stresses and griefs, and they might be having their hair done because they're getting ready to go to a funeral, and all kinds of different. They might have to put their pet down. And just
So never say no
great
to meeting a
joy.
new person,
No,
because you
you've
never
got
could
to be
know
open
what.
to
No.
experiences.
And
Yeah,
introverts,
and
oh, I
this.
don't want to do that. Oh, I'm shy. Oh, I don't feel like going out
No.
today. Do it.
Yeah. Well, and this exciting thing about the book, too, is it opens up doors. Like, someone will contact me on Facebook and, can I saw your book and I just really want to sit down and talk with you. And sure. And so we meet in a cafe, and then next thing I know, I've got a new best friend. And that happened this morning. A guy was posting his photography on Facebook, and I loved it. I just loved it. And I'm like, well, I know how to help you get more integrated into the community. He was new here, so let's meet, and I'll help you, and then you'll help me with photography and technical stuff sometime. And I took a copy of the book, and he read it, and he was just in awe of it, which I didn't even expect that. And
That's lovely.
he wanted a copy, and so now I have a new friend.
All right, we
the
have
book
to
keeps
stop. We're
providing
out
me
of
with such
time. We
grace.
have to stop. But we can do a whole
We're
nother
having so much
show
fun.
another time.
Yes, we can do a whole other
How
show.
fast an hour has go. So people will often say, oh, I can't think of anything to talk for about a whole hour. I says, believe me, it goes fast.
Oh, I don't have
So
a problem with that.
how can our listeners reach you, Kristina?
Well, again, on the website is www.love.com. You can go on there directly and order a book, or order more than one copy of the book if you'd like. I fill those orders myself. So there is an email there if you want it personalized to someone or to yourself. You could send me an email and I'll personalize it I will sign it before we mail it out. And I would love for people to go on the website and read the story, and also read about myself and Trea the artist and Kamal the graphic designer, because it really puts the whole picture together. It really paints such a lovely story of this whole journey that's been going on. So and I have a blog. I do have a blog on there. And you can go on Facebook, All Was Love. Type that in Facebook, you'll find our page. Join the page and you'll see when I link up blogs and things like that.
I think every caregiver out there should join, because you need as much positive energy in your life.
Exactly.
Because there's so much stress, there's so much negativity. You need this to balance you out. Adrienne, how do we get a hold of you and the caregiver space?
It's Adrienne, ADRIENNE, at thecaregiverspace.org, and all of the social media and YouTube stuff is all on there.
Yeah.
And we also have a really good Facebook page that has a lot of groups.
I saw it. I joined your Facebook page.
You did.
Which group did you join? Which group did you join? Which group?
The caregiver. There's one other word after it.
Community. Just the general community.
No, caregiver starts with an S. I can't remember now. I just joined it last night. Okay. But I went down through it and I read the articles and I went through it and I'm like, okay, as a caregiver, that would have been really helpful.
Yeah.
For me
I think there's a place for the book there. Yeah.
Oh, great. Yeah. Well, I'm happy to have you link it up sometime, but we can talk about that, or if you want me to provide an article or anything, I'd be happy to do that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And I'll put you on my resource page for a resource about death and dying.
Okay, great.
And so I'm Dave Nasani. I'm Caregiver Dave. I'm at caregiverdave.com. Just go there and you will find out everything we do and how to get involved, how to join our community. And we thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you next week. So God bless everybody. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Dave. Thank you,
Thank
Adrienne.
you.
I appreciate it.
Thank you.
I enjoyed it very much.
Thank you for listening to the Caregivers Caregiver radio program with Dave Nasani.